Hi, everyone. Welcome. I hope everyone is having a nice Tuesday. We'll just wait another couple of minutes. I know we've got a lot of folks who are really interested in learning about SNAP. So we will just pause for a second here and then get things started in just a second. This is being recorded just, in case, that, you want to, put your video on or take it off. And today, we're going to have our wonderful Vice President of Client Services, Tiffany Scruggs, speak with us here for a little bit, going through a lot of details with SNAP and the emergency allotments that are ending. And then we'll have a lot of time for questions at the end. So you can, save your questions. You can put them in the chat. If you'd like to use your voice, you can definitely, raise your hand and we can get to you later on. And then, like I said, the chat is there for you to put all of your questions there. And if for some reason we aren't able to get to a question that you might have, please follow up with me and we'll be sure to get you all the answers that you want. But thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. As you've hopefully seen in the news, emergency allotments for people who get SNAP have now ended. Those started during the pandemic. So we are seeing a lot of really important changes in the needs that a lot of our clients and neighbors have. And Tiffany here is going to just kind of, explain what's going on and then, what we're doing and how you can help impact that. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you for all the ways that you support the food bank through all of your, your generous time, effort, financial support, if that is something that works for you. And just for being here. All right, so I'm going to let Tiffany take over here and we'll get started. Like I said, please use the chat for any questions and we'll get to those at the end.
All right, thank you, Kate, and thank you everyone for joining. Happy Tuesday. Kate, thank you for the introduction. I also think it's just important as much as I can as a past recipient of SNAP throughout college, I like to share that to just elevate and try to change the narrative in terms of individuals who have had a hardship in their life and who have accessed SNAP throughout their lifetime. Before I pull up the presentation, just wanted to also share, the food bank has been engaged in connecting individuals to SNAP, which is also known as food stamps. That stands for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And so this is our nation's largest defense against hunger. So we are one of the few food banks in terms of Feeding America national organizations that operate and have supported this work for over 10 years. And so some of you have been a part of this journey, but we continue to elevate and bring awareness and try to bring educational efforts in terms of why food banks are involved in helping individuals connect, but also understanding what policy recommendations that we could share at the federal, state, and local level. So with that, I will share my screen. Is everyone seeing that okay? Okay. All right, so we are so grateful for your time, as Kate mentioned. So if you have not heard the news, but I would imagine most of you are on the call because you are concerned as we are concerned. And so SNAP emergency allotments have been available to families, many families, for at least 2 to 3 year time period. And so what does that mean for families? It's very simple. That means in addition to the amount that they received at the beginning of the month in terms of what their income eligible for, they also received an additional deposit into their monthly SNAP accounts to allow individuals to achieve food security. So for many households, the average benefit was an additional $95 a month. And so if you can imagine being low income and on a fixed income, being without that additional amount will be catastrophic for neighbors that we serve. Just in terms of impact to our community and also our EBT retailers. EBT is the actual card that SNAP benefits are loaded on. So in terms of looking at statewide, and I'll break this down a little further as we go through the presentation, SNAP The emergency allotments have provided $75 million to $126 million each month in terms of the amount of benefits that are reaching people, but also our local grocer and EBT retailers. What you have here is just, we always highlight the eligibility requirements for SNAP. So this is just to give you a sense in terms of the income thresholds for our neighbors. So this is a very complicated process. We just wanted to give you a little snapshot in terms of how income eligibility comes into play, and also how these benefits, the monthly amount is determined. There's all kinds of assessments, calculations that's actually executed by local jobs and family service offices. So for us, since we serve 6 counties, we then coordinate with 6 different local jobs and family services to ensure that individuals have the proper calculations so that they can receive the maximum benefit as well. So we have closely monitored. This is a visual that highlights when there's a federal change in terms of individuals who are accessing our services and those who are eligible for food. This is a chart from those individuals that have visited our Muni Lot distribution and Greater Cleveland Food Bank-led distributions. For example, our Euclid Neighborhood Pantry, which some of you have volunteered, and we encourage you to do so in the future. If you take a look on this chart, what this highlights is if there's a change in federal benefits, we see an increase in terms of community needs as it relates to food access. So just to highlight, for example, earlier on at the pandemic, families were receiving the extra unemployment benefits. Families also received stimulus checks. And so you can see here in terms of the decrease of need, in terms of food access and resources needed for individuals to achieve food security. And that's the goal, to make sure that individuals actually know where their next meal is coming from. So if you hear me talk about food insecurity, that means individuals have no idea where their next meal is coming from. And I'll tell you, just by empathy, that's been a very tough situation to be in. And as a reminder, SNAP provides 9 times the amount of meals as any food banks can. So the almost 50 million meals that we distributed last year, you do the math. I'm a social worker at heart. You get the notion in terms of just the tremendous impact that we are so concerned about. Couple that with inflation. So we all been to the grocery stores, and keep in mind, coming from once again, a place of empathy where you or I could simply adjust and just pay the increase of prices. We always use the example in terms of eggs, right? Being out in the community, there's tons of social media awareness. We know that the increased costs are real in terms of you and I, but once again, we are concerned about the low-income community members and wanted to highlight in terms of what families are facing. So under SNAP, there's what's called a thrifty food plan. And what that means, it's really, really nominal amount of daily allotment that individuals receive. And we wanted to just highlight in terms of what families will endure on a weekly basis. And so having a family with 2 children, previously, $199.20 would be their weekly cost if they were accessing SNAP. And in terms of being under the United States Department of Agriculture's thrifty food plan. Fast forward to today, buying that same amount of food would cost the family a weekly cost of $224. And you see the difference monthly, giving us an inflation rate of about 12.5%. And we understand that inflation will continue to increase as we move forward. So changes that are going to happen, we've been talking about it. Unfortunately, February 28th was the last day that many of our neighbors received that second emergency allotment. And yes, it is the word emergency. We have been doing our best to prepare and anticipate what the impact or negative impact will be on food banks, our entire feeding network, and also just the entire anti-hunger relief ecosystem. And so that is yet to be determined. But we continue to work with all of you, our partners, and the overall community so that we can be prepared and make adjustments the best that we can. But we do understand that food banks simply cannot make up the costs or the shortfall in terms of the reduction in benefits. So as of this month, families will go back to only receiving that one-time deposit into their monthly SNAP deposit accounts. And that's also known as their base benefit. So that is why we are extremely concerned. This is not to confuse those on the call today with pandemic EBT benefits, which was provided to children throughout the summer. So this was an additional benefit that families had access to. And so many of you have seen some of the social media in partnership with our Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services and our local Jobs and Family Services, and even some federal perspective through Feeding America and other anti-hunger relief organizations. So when we think about impact, we learn from other states, we learn from other food banks. As I mentioned, we are one of 199 food banks across the Feeding America National Umbrella Organization. And I think we need to think about this for a moment when we talk about the impact. So our friends in Florida, for example, they already went through the process in terms of enacting this, and they ended their SNAP emergency allotments. Food banks immediately felt the impact. And so they coined it as a daily disaster. The Second Harvest Food Bank of Central Florida, after they enacted this and ended their SNAP emergency allotments for families in 2021, for example, you can see the number here that their SNAP recipients, the need increased from 19.4% to 47.9%. And so I'll give you a little context in terms of what we've seen in terms of distribution here by moving into our Coit Food Distribution Center, which has allowed us increased access in terms of our distribution effort. Since October 1st, we've been able to distribute over an additional 1.4 million pounds of food because of our increased capacity. And so while we keep that as a benefit and a value added of being at this building, unfortunately, we know that that need will continue to increase. So when we talk about our community, and I think it's so critically important for those of us on the call, whether you have experience of hunger, if you have lived experience of hunger, lived experience of poverty, or lived experience of any hardship, I will repeat once again, I spend at least weekly opportunities to go out and talk to community members. And so once again, focusing on Cuyahoga County, if I may, for one moment, $23 million reduction of SNAP benefits to people and to those EBT retailers. $50 million in terms of lost benefits to families and also the same population in our 6-county footprint. And this is per month. Statewide is closer to $127 million. So what we are anticipating is seeing increased need. And we also know because businesses and EBT retailers have really built their staffing structure off of the revenue they had access to, we're fearful that that will also lead to job loss within the EBT retailer community, which that means more individuals will be in need and eligible for our services. So we continue to highlight, and our efforts are not over. We will continue to elevate this in different interviews and publications, and really just being on the ground to make sure the recipients of SNAP can be prepared in terms of change of the way that they will live their lives. And I say that because in talking to some community members, and I've shared this, some of our neighbors are prepared to decrease the amount of meals that they have a day. Going from 3 meals throughout the pandemic, that additional allotment has allowed them to actually eat 3 meals a day, and coupled that with access to our Feeding Partner Network services, are prepared to go down to 2 meals a day. So I just want us to be mindful in terms of what our neighbors are preparing for. So this is just some additional data points to understand what our families are going to face. So individuals, and this is really our seniors that we're concerned about, many seniors, because of Social Security benefits or their retirement, were traditionally only eligible for $23 per month is their base benefit. So that's an additional $258 per month that many of our senior households have received, and once again, helping them to achieve food security. So actually, I apologize, that's a reduction of $258 per month, as they actually were eligible and receiving $281 a month. So individuals 60 and up, this was the amount that they were receiving. So they're gonna go from $281 to $23 a month. I know I gave you a data point, and there's a lot of data just in terms of also households with children. So a household of 3, in terms of previously being entitled to $586 a month, has been receiving an additional $154 a month, bringing them to $740 a month. And so you see the different examples here. And so once again, it's our job to make sure that we're working with our partners to make sure that they're increasing their capacity. Our food sourcing team is working to also be mindful of additional food that we have to purchase and source so that we can meet the demand as much as possible in terms of our feeding partner network efforts, in terms of getting food to our individuals who are in need. This is just another visual. Our Center for Community Solutions, which is a statewide think tank organization, we have conversations often to not only think about the changes within SNAP, but we'll maybe later on in the year also elevate changes that are upcoming in terms of Medicaid, which is our free or low income health insurance program. And so that will begin for many of our neighbors in May, but I don't want to derail, just wanted to give you that sense in terms of what we can anticipate and some of the priorities that they're also working alongside the food bank with. So we talked about it, EBT retailers, impact to grocery store partners, 126 million monthly reduction in terms of SNAP revenue, and also the amount of support that individuals will have access to, leading to a 43% cut in SNAP spending amongst our EBT and local grocery retailers. So being mindful, I did state that the food banks simply cannot make up for this shortfall, but here's what we can do and what we've been engaged in thus far is education efforts like today. So not just understanding and making sure recipients of the benefits understand the changes, but then taking it a step further and working with our partners who are involved in connecting individuals to these critical benefits on what other programs are available. So WIC, for example, if you've had a young child or know someone that's pregnant, that's the Women, Infant, and Children program. That is the ability for neighbors to access your milk, free formula, and other healthy items to help encourage expecting mothers and also young children so that they can have a healthy foundation. Our Produce Perks program, which are statewide efforts, which really allows additional access to produce and healthy items when going to the grocery store and also farmers markets. For us, as I mentioned, we've had outreach efforts and constantly assist individuals through our call center and also our outreach team to make sure that they're receiving the maximum benefit when they have to rely on accessing SNAP. And also advocacy efforts. And so, for example, we work behind the scenes with legal aid and also our customer relations offices offered by local jobs and family services to elevate challenges that our neighbors face in terms of when the policy is just simply not applied appropriately. So I mentioned it, please, if you know anyone in need, feel free to take a picture of this, save our phone number. I'm hoping that those on the call are all engaged in wanting to help individuals because hunger lives everywhere. And so this is just a visual to bring awareness to, we have a team of individuals who all work remotely in terms of answering phone calls, which not only include English, but we have the ability to connect all individuals who speak different languages to our statewide language line. And we've also have made investments and have hired 2 Spanish speaking staff in terms of being mindful of the increased Latinx populations within our communities. And so individuals can give us a call Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. to understand where they can go in their community to receive additional free food resources, children's programs, mobile pantry programs, brick and mortar pantries, hot meals. We operate 14 different feeding programs, and it's our job to make sure that the community members and our entire stakeholder groups understand where they can go in time of need. We also appreciate the opportunity, and we've gotten back to being out and being stationed at vulnerable places in the community that's staffed by our outreach counselors. So understanding the importance of that, really that in-person touch in terms of connections to SNAP and other critical resources. And so we continue to be available and want to couple and partner with other organizations to meet that need. At the bottom right quadrant, for those of you who you might have seen, our mobile unit, but our mobile unit is really an innovative strategy where we're able to provide small amount of food distribution efforts, but to really also operate and offer that connection to SNAP and other resources. And so if you're having an outdoor event and it's a population that you think could benefit, feel free to reach out to me or another team member, and we're happy to connect in that capacity. So when we look ahead for the future and all of these things that we are up against, but we think that we've done a pretty nice job in terms of planning for the future as it relates to our expansion. So thank you all on the call for your continued and previous support and even future support. So what we have, we understand that there's many barriers that many of our neighbors, those who are low income, those who might have mobility challenges in terms of transportation. We are preparing, since we've opened up our new Coit Food Distribution Center, we are making renovations right now to our South Waterloo facility, that $13 million renovation. And I always highlight that, and I'm proud to say that because we are truly making that powerful investment in a community that so deserves it. And so you have pictures in terms of what the center will look like at South Waterloo. I know I'm just so excited about this. So a family-friendly, a choice food pantry model. And once again, choice. It looks like a grocery store. For those of you who have joined us at our Euclid Neighborhood Pantry or at a partner organization that offers a choice pantry as a best practice, I think you would agree how welcoming, how it reduces stigma, and it also allows individual the ability to select the food options that are most appropriate for their household, right? So we understand because of convenience, the fear of spreading germs, we went to a pre-packed model. And so we're doing our best to lead that charge and help encourage our partners to think about operating a choice model pantry. So this is what we'll have at South Waterloo, just to get you excited. We anticipate serving upwards of 30,000 individuals annually, as we also will incorporate access to other services at this facility. So once again, this is a lot of information that I've provided you all, but I want to make sure that we have time for questions and answers and conversation with this group. This is my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me. As I stop sharing the screen, just want to put another data point. You know, how many of us think that we could survive off of $6 a day in food costs? Just, I think that I see some faces. Thank you, Chloe. I think that that would be a challenge. And actually some local organizations and now also national approaches have been to exude it and really display empathy. We are looking to coordinate a community-wide SNAP challenge so that we can just walk a week or so in our family's shoes in terms of the low-income community that will definitely be plagued by this federal change. So thank you. With that, I'll be quiet. That's a lot of information, and I don't know the best strategy in terms of questions. I do want to give a shout out to the Greater Cleveland Food Bank staff. You all have been very thoughtful as we continue to elevate this issue. I would also want to thank our donors and supporters again who are on the call. So with that, Kate, would you please begin the Q&A portion?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for going through this. It is a lot of information and a lot of numbers. And so I really appreciate being able to get a sense of that because it's a big program, 6 counties and a lot of people. And digging into the details, I think really gives a better sense of the scope of what these changes will mean for our neighbors. So thank you for sharing that and going over all of this really important information. Folks, you are welcome to use the chat for questions. If you'd like to use your voice, you can also please feel free to use in the reactions button. There is a raise hand feature. please just do that so that I can, make sure I get to folks who want to use that. Let's start with a great question from Ray here. He's asking, do you see any future changes to SNAP to address the shortfall created by the end of emergency funding?
Yes, I will say that there are recommendations in terms of policy and changes to SNAP. For example, increasing the base benefit so that our seniors who are income eligible don't have to try to mitigate only receiving $23 a month, but there's recommendations in terms of a national framework to recommend this base benefit being $140 a month. There's also other policy changes in terms of the amount of recertification, which creates additional administrative burden for our local jobs and family offices and state entities that actually are the approving entity in terms of these benefits, just to give you a sense of some of what we're talking about in terms of strategy. And we also will continue to understand in terms of populations, recommendations that we can make as it relates to the Farm Bill. And the Farm Bill is actually the federal structure where all feeding programs live. And so we will keep this group informed in terms of additional ideas if you have, but also our recommendations and also the opportunity to engage in advocacy alerts with us.
Great. Yeah, just to highlight, for, a lot of the seniors who are on this, that $23 a month is what they're going to be getting. That's, less than $6 a week to supplement.
Correct.
And, we're talking a lot about, food inflation, we have the amount that's gone up almost 13%, but, gas prices have gone up, housing prices have gone up, heating prices have gone up, medical expenses continue to rise. So, there's not a lot of room to shift money in a personal budget from something else to food when these go away. So
Yes.
it's a complex, We've got a great question here about volunteer opportunities. I'd love for you to share some ways for folks to help our community in that way. We've got lots of opportunities. I'd love for you to share a little bit about some of those great ways.
Sure. The core amount of our volunteer opportunities exist currently here at our Coit Food Distribution, whether that's helping to prepare children's meals in our repack or kitchen or congregate meals. There is opportunity where we offer a variety of shifts, generally in a 3-hour time frame, and that's available. You can go online and create a profile and see what open slots that we have. We are instituting our family nights, which allow opportunities for families with children 6 and up to come the last Mondays of each month, I believe. And someone on the food bank can correct me if I misspoke on that. But that are ways that we can introduce this work at an early age. I referenced our Euclid Neighborhood Pantry, and that is where we actually hold 15 slots, and some days 2 15-person slots, where some of our smaller groups or families like to come. That is a great way to see the need, to talk to our neighbors, and to also be mindful of social isolation that many of our neighbors still endure because of the pandemic. And so that is a variety of days, Monday through Friday, and 2 Saturdays a month. And so feel free, if you want to go on and register, if something is full, reach out to me. I'll get you in there anyway. And lastly, our Muni Lot distribution, for those of you who are wondering and have supported that mass distribution. Previously, before January, we operated a weekly distribution, and we scaled down because we have our partners. Many of our partners are back active, and we are so thankful and grateful for their distribution efforts. And so we decreased it to twice a month. And so originally we had plans to move away from that model, but because of this federal announcement, it just wasn't the time. So we need at least 100 individuals to successfully execute our mass distribution held at the City of Cleveland or Brown's Tailgating Lot, where we continue to serve 2,500 households per distribution in a 3 to 4 hour period. So you select. We also have small amounts of administrative support that you can reach out to us on an individual basis if you're interested to learn more.
Yeah, there's really something for everyone, and our volunteer team is great with helping match people. You know, if you have physical limitations, there's lots of different ways to get involved. And I will say I've volunteered several times at the Euclid Food Pantry. It really is a really wonderful experience because you actually get to interact with our clients and neighbors and just get to know people, which is not obviously for everybody if you want to be behind the scenes, but it's a really great opportunity. And also, most of our partners also rely on volunteers. So there's also lots of great opportunities, and you can see some of those on our website as well. All right, so Chloe, I'm going to ask you to unmute here.
Hi, Chloe. How are
Hi,
you?
guys. Thank you so much, Kate and Tiffany. You're wonderful to do this today. Very, very helpful in understanding SNAP. Maybe we could just take a few steps back and say a little bit of basics about how individuals and clients know that they are able to come to the food bank. Is it automatic that they can get the food? If they have SNAP, do they know that they can automatically have access? What does that process look like for somebody to be able to walk in and actually get something?
Thank you, Chloe, who's very a valued board member on the call. Thank you so much. So, and apologies for those who are not as familiar with the work. I do tend to jump right in. That's only because this body is just full of passion. All right. So I'll just talk about the different eligibility requirements. So keep in mind for SNAP, you saw the chart. That is for individuals. The income eligibility threshold is actually 130% of the federal poverty guidelines. So a family of three, that's a little less than 36,000. Whereas eligibility for receiving food is slightly higher at 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. So a family of three, that's about 46,000, give or take. So thank you. In terms of awareness, what we require, because we use Pantry Track, also new name Fresh Track, but that is the data platform that not only a food bank, but anyone in our feeding partner network, that is where we track individuals' basic information, right? Their household, the number of individuals in their household, and because of the compliance that we're under in terms of federal food, state food, and all the other requirements that we're bound by, we track that information in that system. And that has been a great way for us to continue to monitor trends. But in terms of eligibility to receive food from any food bank or feeding partner network, it's 200% of the federal poverty guideline. Those numbers change every year. So July 1st, we are anticipating the change in terms of income eligibility. Someone asked in terms of strategy and what we can think about in terms of just overall SNAP. We have actually, there's been another recommendation from some national folks in terms of increasing that eligibility requirement to 230%, which would help widen the net. And that's actually what we saw in some states throughout the pandemic, is that increased eligibility. Great question, Chloe. Thank you. Did I answer that okay?
Great. Okay. We have some great questions in the chat, and I'm going to ask Al's second question first, which is just clarifying about the food that we distribute and that our partners distribute versus what the food is from SNAP. And so, you know, how SNAP is grocery stores versus what we're doing. You just want to clarify where that food that people are coming from our programs versus the SNAP program.
Sure. So SNAP is a federal program, which is separate from the food that food banks distribute. So SNAP, being our nation's largest defense, is what they call it, an entitlement program, but that is the support program in terms of food access. In each of the states administers it differently, but I'll focus on Ohio. So that is the ability for, once you go through the eligibility process, you could have a helper like the Greater Cleveland Food Bank that would help if you're income eligible. And that's simply done by us asking you questions verbally to see if you are eligible for the benefit. We then submit your application into a statewide system called Ohio Benefits. That then triggers or flags that the application has been submitted by a local jobs and family service office. Once an individual is redeemed eligible, they will receive an actual physical card. So think of it like, I'll call it a grocery store card, but it's also called EBT. That gives families and recipients of SNAP the ability to, on their own, Go to a grocery store, go to a farmer's market, go to any retailer that accepts the EBT card to select food items of their choice. Versus food from a food bank, where we have a different income requirement, as I discussed. That is our job, is making sure that we're executing and offering free access to the food that we source, whether it's purchased product, where we've seen an increase on the amount of purchased product that we've had to buy because of a reduction in federal and state product. And so thank you once again for your financial support. But this is really dedicated to distribution of food through our feeding partner network, in terms of those 14 different feeding programs that I referred to. So in terms of how we've been helping community members understand how they can access and really stretch their dollar, we are encouraging neighbors on these benefits to access free supports, free food resources distributed by our feeding partner network within our 6 county and abroad, and then go to the grocery store to then purchase the most high priority items on your grocery list, in terms of really making sure that you stretch your dollar and be thoughtful about the resources available to you. Did that answer your question? Now I can't see you, but I'm hoping that did.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
and no, I mean, it's a great question, because, one of the benefits of SNAP, well, twofold, is, obviously, our folks who are on SNAP are able to choose what they get, versus, the food that's donated or that we purchase, is not like a grocery store. It's a limited selection of staples and produce. But, at a grocery store, you can get whatever works for your family, your dietary needs. And then also, like, that SNAP money goes right back into the community. Tiffany, you said that it's, $23 million a month, which is $250 million a year of money that's not going to our local grocery stores. So it's a big deal on both sides of that. So thank you for clarifying how those two programs work. Al also had a question, and you were starting to get on this about, how clients cope with the paperwork requirements. I was at a presentation with our colleague Katie describing the application process for SNAP, and it sounds worse than FAFSA, definitely worse than your taxes. And to no fault of, the state and the hardworking folks at Jobs and Family Services who help with that. But if you want to just, you talked a little bit about what our help center can do. You just kind of go into, how we're able to offer relief with our helpline.
Sure. So our team, throughout the years, we've enhanced our approach. We understood, the first few years we focused on simply making sure we're helping income eligible people submit their application, and that was achieved by a hard copy and actually either faxing or taking them to a local neighborhood family services center. But we evolved, and since the state of Ohio transitioned to the statewide system in terms of where all public benefits live, in terms of accessibility for not only the community, but for their workers. And so for us, it's making sure that neighbors who we help apply have all the paperwork, so proof of income, proof of household expenses. This is something that's very important as we think about our seniors and disabled households. There's additional calculations and additional expenses that can really help support an increased benefit amount. And so our team, we spend time helping individuals upload that documentation into a portal. I will tell you that self-service portal is not functioning at a rate that we would like for it to in terms of efficiency. About 4 years ago, the state of Ohio did roll out a $1.2 billion with a B dollar software system, and we have yet to understand its limitations or even its true efficiencies as it relates to what non-Jobs and Family Services staff has access to. So we do a lot around helping individuals upload that information into that system or sending it to Jobs and Family Services directly so that they are truly prepared and help hopefully decrease the amount of time that it takes for them to go through that acquisition process.
Yeah, it's a lot. And the website, I know it, has some issues. I know that everyone is stretched thin with, being able to get on the phone with folks. So it's a lot, and it's a very complicated process. So, everything that we can do to help, folks apply is great for our clients and neighbors. Okay, so we're going to switch here to a question from Rich here about, do older individuals who get SNAP benefits also qualify for Medicaid to help with medical expenses? So this might be a Medicaid, Medicare kind of breakdown here.
Right. So there are slightly different Medicaid eligibility requirements. So you could actually make a little less than SNAP. But to not confuse, this is when I say it's complex, it is very complex. So just because you're eligible for SNAP, that statewide system that I referred to, our team and individuals has the ability to apply for all benefits, for Medicaid, childcare, cash assistance, and also SNAP. In terms of eligibility, slightly different eligibility guidelines. I will just focus on the senior component for Medicaid versus Medicare savings. That's where we see many of our seniors are not being properly enrolled or even offered that additional support to help reduce the amount of medical expenses that they're actually providing out of their own pockets. And so Medicare savings is an additional benefit that individuals over the age of 60 can apply for and receive a monthly deposit, if you will, in terms of supports for their medical expenses. So we could actually have a whole nother lunch and learn on Medicaid and Medicare savings, and maybe we build that in as we prepare for Medicaid changes. For example, in Ohio, we are concerned about the nearly 465,000 individuals who are on Medicaid. And so there will be an additional learning opportunity to just understand the differences.
Yeah, it is complicated because, all of these programs have slightly different requirements.
Right.
And, targeting obviously different groups of people, but there's different application processes. I know I've heard, folks who want to, make one application process for all these different programs. And that would be, I think, the dream, right? To have one way to put all the information, and then you don't have to do it in different forms and different places. Hopefully one day, maybe. But I wanted to ask, I think that with a lot of programs, there can be some misconceptions about, the folks who use benefits. And, I really appreciate that you are willing to share your own story with this. Even sometimes people ask about, fraud or things like that. And, that's, you can share about this. It's actually not the problem that sometimes people want to try to act like it is. If you want to share a little bit about how this program is very, very well run.
Sure. And so, I know that there have been the worst of the worst as it relates to the misuse of SNAP. And so I will just share in terms of data around SNAP fraud that they call it. This is actually one of the programs that has the lowest rate of fraud. And actually fraud is defined by the federal government as it relates to SNAP, and it's managed by the Attorney General's office. That is where they select different EBT retailers. And while it is considered fraud, it's also individuals forced to survive based on the benefits that are available to them. So there have been cases where fraud is considered an EBT retailer that allows a community member and a recipient of SNAP to use their EBT card to purchase non-food items such as sanitary supplies, hygiene items such as toilet paper and deodorant. So when we talk about conversations or different conversations and approaches, while SNAP is geared towards food, we are also mindful families need toilet paper and those critical hygiene items as well. And so should it be categorized as fraud? I don't know. I don't have the expertise there, but I wanted to give you an example of fraud. There are also times in some, not necessarily in Ohio, where individuals are using other individuals' SNAP who aren't currently receiving SNAP. We've seen some of that. But SNAP is the federal program, at least in Ohio, that has the lowest amount of fraud. So just wanted to clarify that, and thank you, Kate, for bringing that question to my attention.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that pretty much across the nation for virtually any program, there is less fraud in SNAP than what even like a for-profit company would kind of accept internally. I believe the last that I heard was under 2% or about 2%, which is um, lower than what virtually any organization, any company, any government program would find acceptable. And almost all of that is because a retailer is allowing someone to purchase things like toilet paper and diapers, because SNAP is just about food, and that ignores other really basic human needs that there are very few programs that folks have access
Right.
to support those other things, because there are still gaps, whether because it's not just healthcare and food. There are other basic things that folks need, and that's obviously like a larger scale question. And this is similar as can folks buy alcohol or tobacco with SNAP?
No, they cannot. No, they cannot. And so that was another great question to continue to dispel the myths in terms of SNAP. And Kate, I do want to go back to, you asked about the recipient or the makeup of a SNAP recipient. I know what the assumption is, and actually most SNAP recipients are working individuals. They have jobs. It's just that they don't have enough to support their families, and they're eligible in terms of the income threshold established by the federal government. But it is refreshing to report out that most SNAP recipients are working.
Yeah, and I think that's I'm so glad that you brought that up, because minimum wage is not sufficient for even a single person to really support themselves. And then you add maybe folks who have disabilities, who are dependent, or kids, seniors. It's there's kind of that group of people, but there are a lot of families who there's just an income gap, and I think we all recognize that. And again, as expenses are going up, income is not going up at the same level as all of these expenses are, and it's a hard place to be in, to be working so hard and still not to be able to make ends meet. And I think SNAP and the programs that we offer, being able to fill that gap. I mean, it's a life-changing program for people to be able to be their best selves, to go to school, to keep that job. And I think that's great to keep in mind. So thank you for adding that as well.
Absolutely. And I think here, you are all food bank family members. And so you might have recalled or been a part of conversations. We made a conscientious effort off of principle. We understood the importance to make sure that our staff was not income eligible to receive food from our feeding partner network. And so we did an increase in terms of starting wages for our entry-level staff. And we looked at 2/3 of our wages within the staff within our organization to make sure that we were thoughtful about hunger cliffs, benefits cliffs, just the overall conversation as it relates to income and household access to income. And so we continue to watch that and monitor that. We know that we've learned from different banking institutions who have done research to understand, how do we define a livable wage, right? A livable wage for me might be different than what a livable wage is for individuals on the call, but we want to continue to let data drive that work. And we know with inflation, we continue to make sure that we can sustain any changes like that for our staff. But we're mindful just in terms of the dollars that all of us have to stretch in order to reach the stabilization and stability.
Yeah, and certainly, who knows what, how the economy will kind of, continue to change and evolve, but there's, a lot of uncertainty, and, childcare costs just come to mind. Like, I mean, there are a lot of things that are pressing on folks, through all walks of life. And of course, it's just when you have lower incomes, you just have fewer opportunities to be able to change, your life so that you can, so that you can have all the things that you need to take care of yourself and your family. So it's great to keep that in mind as well. So something that you had mentioned a little bit earlier in our presentation was about the Farm Bill. I know that there are some folks on this call who are, a little familiar. It's one of our key points that we focus on with our advocacy team. Just really quickly, the Farm Bill funds both SNAP and also a really large variety of agricultural programs where the federal government worked with agricultural producers to support and purchase excess product and then help get that out to folks in need. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about where we are with that, because the Farm Bill is coming up for renewal this fall, and it's a very large and important program. And I know there's already talk about how that recommendations and how that might shake out as we gear up for the really important kind of advocacy season around the Farm Bill and the SNAP.
Oh, I'm happy to plant the seed, but I will also allow our Director of Advocacy, who just started, as a reminder, our previous Director of Advocacy, Kimmy Lovano, transitioned away from the food bank, and we've just hired a new Director of Advocacy. But in terms of what we know is ahead of us, we will actually have a conference, an anti-hunger conference that takes place in Washington, D.C. during the month of May. But before that time frame, we are going to look internally and also look at other states to understand what areas of the Farm Bill really needs evaluations, because many of it is antiquated and was developed many years ago and is just not relevant. So in addition to SNAP, in addition to food access supports, we're also mindful of the child nutrition reauthorization. So that's our kids programming, the federal lens in terms of how we feed our children, including our free breakfast and lunch efforts, and also summer feeding. And so we are preparing in terms of federal earmarks, state earmarks, in terms of what should our ask be, being one of 12 food banks in the state of Ohio, but as I mentioned, just one of 199 across the nation. And so I would just ask that you join and stay tuned. If you're not already receiving advocacy alerts, please go to our website and you can quickly enroll in terms of take action under our website, and we can then help equip, whether it's a quick phone call, an email. We're collecting testimonials as we speak from our recipients. It's helpful to hear from experts. It's great to hear from individuals in the community, but it's really impactful when you talk to someone who has lived experience and currently accessing supports. And so stay tuned for additional opportunities, but we are working on that as we speak.
Yeah, it's really crucial, and without things like the Farm Bill and the children's program, and those are fundamental to the work that we do. So again, keep your eyes peeled for opportunities to help support in that way, because ultimately, without having federal and state support, this system will really break down. So we will be extremely grateful for everything that folks can do to get involved with that. But just another great question here. I think kind of in the meantime, before the Farm Bill comes, or other ways that we might be creative in trying to solve food insecurity. A great question about what ways could at the federal or state level be used to get more tax dollars into the hands of Americans in need. So I think you've mentioned a couple of different recommendations. If you want to just kind of touch on some of those again. I know we're getting close to the end of the hour here. I think that would be really great to hear about as we're wrapping up.
So I'm not sure in terms of strategy, in terms of redirecting tax dollars at the federal or state level. Keep in mind when we talk about this federal change, this change was due to the Congressional Act. So it lived within Congress, right? So in terms of the budget process, I think we need to stay tuned in terms of what efforts or recommendations that we can make in terms of redirecting tax dollars. Now, I will get granular for a moment. I did speak about administrative burden, for example, that local jobs and family services have to endure. For example, in Cuyahoga County, we are concerned just about the vacancies that exist within our local jobs and family services. They're just not able to have the enough staff support to manage the need. And with continued increased need, we know that we need to continue to elevate this at the local level and redirect some dollars so that they can have an increase of starting wages for their staff, similar to what was done at the child welfare level in terms of one of the health and human service entities here. So that is more thinking about the health and human service levy and the dollars that are associated with staffing models. But that's really, our job has also been elevating to the local county council and also, for example, some of the local mayors, where we've been able to help elevate just what we know in terms of some challenges around performance and overall community member experience. And so that is some of the strategy that we've talked about as it relates to deployment of resources. When we think about federal and state, that's a little bit different in terms of the budgeting process. But if there are strategies that come about as we prepare for the Farm Bill, we will be sure to reach out to this network.
Yeah, absolutely. There are lots of different ways that we can kind of attack this problem. And I think, being creative, being responsive is what, our team is so great about doing. And, I think being, the Greater Cleveland Food Bank has been such a leader, and your team has been such a leader nationwide in helping folks understand, issues with accessing these benefits, that I'm sure that as we have these larger national conversations that you and your team will, really help, I think, spearhead, hopefully some really, positive changes. But, in the meantime, we just got a couple of minutes here. Obviously, I want to thank you again, for being with us today. I want to thank everyone here on the call. And also, just, to remind folks that, you seniors are going to be losing, $250 a month going down to $23 for the minimum allotment. There are families that could be losing $550, $700 more. And this was happening overnight for our families, our community members, our neighbors who, are going to suddenly lose hundreds of dollars of benefits. Even folks who are losing just $95, I mean, $95, that would matter to me, and I'm sure that would matter to you. So we're just extremely grateful that you've taken the time to learn more about, how our community is facing this. And I know it does seem like a lot. These are big numbers, but everything that you do from, learning about this program to volunteering, to financial support, if that's something that you are able to do, really will, as we come together to fight food insecurity, all of those pieces matter and makes just an incredible difference. So I really appreciate everyone's time again. If you do have questions as you're thinking about this, or as you see other news articles, you can definitely, reach out to Tiff directly. You can reach out to me or really anyone on our team, and we will help get you the information that you need to understand and please, and to share and educate other people in your network so that they understand the importance of SNAP and what it means to people in our community. Tiffany, anything else that you'd like to add here today before we close?
No, I did see some of our food sourcing team members in the chat, and I wanted to just leave with an additional data point, mindful of the buying power that food banks have. And so we appreciate, I will say thank you again for your contributions. But about a year and a half ago, a truckload of green beans cost the food bank $18,000, where today that same truckload of green beans costs $24,000. And so just as a reminder, yes, people will be impacted by this federal change, but then how does food banks manage and understand what our ability is to make those financial adjustments to support the community in the middle of our fiscal year? But that is what we've been accustomed to doing, especially throughout the pandemic. So I hope you learned something today. As a reminder, your homework assignment, please share the word in terms of our Help Center phone number. Also, feel free to visit our website. We do have a map locator there as well. But for me personally, I love a human touch. That is where conversations happen, the trust building happens, and also just that empathy that's not always given when you use a system.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you to all the humans here who have joined us. We hope that you'll join us. We'll have two members of our food source resourcing team here with us next month, so you can learn more about that. And we'll really dive into at that point the gap that the food bank will need to be trying to solve as SNAP is cut, but the need remains so high. So I hope you'll join us in April to learn more about that. But thank you again. We really do appreciate everyone's time. Please reach out with more questions. And thank you for all you do for our community, for the food bank, for our neighbors. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful day. And hopefully we'll all see you soon.
Bye, everyone.